Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart. Today in the shop I have a CRF300L with me. We will be eliminating the OEM fender on that bike and replacing it with the TST Industries Fender Eliminator. I know that the OEM fender is very large and a lot of guys want to eliminate it. Some guys have points against doing that because the fender is meant to keep the road and dirt kickback off of your back. So choice is really yours, but here at TST Industries, we do provide some really high-end fender eliminators. So in this video, we will be showing you how to install our system on the bike. This is a very, very easy installation. It comes in several components. I'll show you how to pre-build the parts on the table and then transfer them on the bike and make that installation. Let's quickly review what we have here. The parts come to you in this format. They come out of a bag. They're all separate, and then they build into an assembly like this. It's very, very simple. Just a couple simple tools make that assembly. Then we transfer that onto the bike once the fender has been taken off. Here we have a little closeout plate that closes out a void left behind by the removal of the fender. We've decided not to let any grime, debris, or water enter the sub tray there, so we will be putting that on the bike as well. Now all of these components come together, so no worries about having to choose several different sets of parts. Let's just quickly run through some of the materials that we've chosen. Here you see we have CNC machined billet aluminum. It's been anodized black. It's really nice, really high-end look, and it gives you really nice longevity. This is an adjustable setup. The base fastens it onto the bike. It provides you with channeling for routing your license plate light wiring, should you choose to use a license plate light. And there are hinge points here and here. If you unlock this, it enables adjustability of the angle of your license plate. This component here is a very simple closeout. It's made of stainless steel sheet, powder coated black to match the underside of the bike. And we will reuse two of the screws that come off the OEM setup to fasten this onto the bike. Very simple, just a couple screw connections, not a big deal. Like I mentioned, if you are running a license plate light, you may choose to do another aftermarket light. We do provide a stealth license plate light here. It's very nice and low profile, kind of clamps in between the license plate bracket and the license plate itself. It disappears behind the license plate, yet provides a nice ample brightness output. Very simple to connect to the bike. I will show you how to do that. This is a separate kit. We do not combo this with any of our components because some guys decide to use a different brand or not use one at all. So it is optional. I suggest that you guys do opt for some kind of a license plate light on your setup. Another optional kit I want to mention is our extra link kit. This is spliced in between this hinge point and the receiving hinge on the L bracket, and basically enables you to have another knuckle of adjustability. It's not necessary, but some guys like to extend their license plate holding surface beyond the end of the bike and then be able to adjust further. We do have those available should you choose to want to play with that. They're on tstindustries.com. Anyway, all right, let's get going with the installation. I highly recommend using a medium or better thread locking compound on some of these connections. I'll show you how to do that. Let's get started. Okay, here on the table you see I've arranged the components of the kit that come in a bag together, kind of in a way that suggests how they go together. I also have prepared this pre-built unit so that you see the finished product. These two components here will go to the side for now. The large M6 countersunk screw is meant for fastening all of this, the entire assembly to the bike, and this goes on the bike in place of the fender. All right, let's get started here. We have two of these L brackets. As you can see, they can be put on this way or this way, and this will determine whether the plate sits on a downward angle or an upward angle. For this particular assembly, I recommend going in this fashion with the tail of the bike like so, and the license plate hanging on that kind of a slope. On the main base component, there is a protrusion boss here that locates with the round hole of our L bracket, and it forms a hinge point. And here we will install this button head M6 screw through a washer, like so. This is one of those connections that I recommend using a thread locking compound on. Do not want a permanent thread lock on here, but something like medium or high strength removable will work really well. I will use a 4mm Allen to tighten this connection down. Before I tighten down, I'm going to make sure that my L bracket is flat against the boss surface and engaged onto that boss protrusion. That way we will be putting pressure of the washer and fastener against this flat and locking everything in place. I'm going to arrange it on this angle for now. This will make things simple for us. I'm not going to fully tighten this screw. That adjustment will be made on the bike with everything put together. I'm going to repeat the steps on the other side of this assembly here. And now I want to make sure that these surfaces are parallel to each other, or as close to it as possible. Snug it up a little bit. And now we will superimpose the main bracket onto this setup here. And as you can see in my pre-built unit, we are using the middle holes. So now our small M5 countersunk screws will protrude from the front to the rear of this setup, and we have these locking nuts that will get assembled onto this screw flange first. And now I'll be using a 3mm Allen and an 8mm box wrench from the rear. Repeat the steps on this side. I did not use a thread locking compound on this connection because these nuts do have a nylock element in there. They will self-lock. I do not tighten this all the way down. There is a little bit of adjustability here. I will tighten it all down while it's already on the bike and we see what the final product will look like. That way I can make a nice adjustment and make sure everything's level, centered, and so forth. All right, let's get this over to the bike and let's perform our installation. In the first step, we will remove the license plate off the bike. We will save the fasteners that hold the license plate to the bike and reuse them on our new TST Industries setup. If you do not like your fasteners or for some reason you don't have them, we have these available as well. If you want to upgrade to a nice anodized version, we do have these nice anodized washers and stainless screws. They are available in different colors in case you want to customize your setup. You'll find those at tstindustries.com next to all of these products that I'm showing. Now let's grab a 6mm Allen and remove these two fasteners, and then also the same fasteners on the opposite side of the bike. These do come out with shoulder washers. Make sure you collect those, you don't want to lose them. Also take notice, the forward position has a silver color washer and the rear position has a black color washer. Make sure that you reinstall those in the same order. At this point, the seat is free to come out. We will pull it backwards and in a swooping rearward upward motion. It comes off, and then this tail top center tail fairing can come up. We will You need to pull out the side fairings straight out. They do have interference geometry locks here and here. Those just pull straight out of the grommets and unlock the features that will release the tail. There are additional little pegs here that interfere with windows. They do hinge up, and then you could spread this, pops right out. With the top center off, we have access to all the wiring here. I'm gonna slip off this boot and find this sealed connector that has 2 wires, brown and green. This will need to be disconnected. Locking features right here. We have to press that down, and that just pops out. Now there is a little window that's here. We will slide this down like so. And now when we unscrew the fender, that will just come right down. Probably have to guide it a little bit more as I take off the fender. Let's hop down on the bottom and take off some screws. The fasteners of interest from down below are here, here, and here. They require a 5mm Allen to extract them. We will ditch this one altogether. These two will be saving to reinstall our small closeout plate with. Once I get to the last one, I like to suspend my fender with my hand so it doesn't just drop off. And I will carefully guide that plug from up top, make sure it comes out. Nice and easy, good to go. We can now close out this void here with our little closeout plate. As you can see, the holes are closer to one of the edges. That closer edge goes towards the rear of the bike. We will fasten that in using the same screws that came out of the fender. If you'd like to do so, you can use your thread locking agent on these threads. I typically don't stress these too much because there's not a lot of loading going on here. All right, and now here is the area where our entire Fender Eliminator will mount into. The inside of the base for the Fender Eliminator is cut out to the exact shape of the plastics around here. So that is what will fix it in place. And we have one screw that will go through here and fasten it to the frame. Now, since we are putting in one single fastener, we have the ability to rotate unless we fix it really tightly. So that is why we will be putting the thread locking agent on this hole. Make sure that you get enough on there so that it stays in place. Our warranty covers these components against manufacturer defects. Obviously, if you do not fasten this tight enough and use thread locking agent, you may lose this, and that is not covered under warranty. So make sure you follow these directions exactly. I wanted to quickly add a little note about this little drain hole here. Honda has devised this hole into the geometry here to provide a little drain, because you have a cup here in case you have any water enter around the taillight or the top. This will allow that water to drain. We are going to use that for our license plate light wires. If you are using license plate light assemblies with this setup here, this is where the wire will route up through the subtray here into the tail, still leaving enough area open for that drain to drain the water away. All right, let's get going. If you've chosen not to run a license plate light, then from this point forward, you will get your countersunk screw through here, cake your thread locking agent on this screw really good, get it lined up, and move forward and tighten it down, good to go. If you are using a license plate light, I will show you how to pre-configure that. Our license plate light rests between the license plate and this bracket. You can remove this masking and stick this to your license plate first and then superimpose it. I like to just get it on here. I don't even use this. This is just a device that we've built in for those guys that worry about losing their license plate light. We have never actually lost one when it's configured the way I will show you. So we'll use the clamping force between here. The wire will go down in between this bracket and the boss. Now we will route it through here, back up to the top. We designed this component to house the wiring inside and clamp it in place. That way you don't have any wires hanging, possibly snagging against something, but that will require a little bit extra finesse. If you were to just put it in place here and put it on the bike and lock it down, then you may not have enough slack here for when you go to adjust. So I recommend leaving a little bit of slack here, like so. It's not very unsightly, but it gives you a little bit of extra slack to adjust with. If you're the type of guy that likes to lock down a zip tie onto every piece of wiring, we did cut a recess here into this component. You could pass a zip tie around the whole thing. And at the very, very end, when you've achieved your adjustment and everything, you can just cinch it down. I typically don't use these on this connection because I like it just locked down against the sub tray. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna leave a little bit of slack here. Now through the top, you see I have this cutout milled here to run this wire here and provide enough clearance for it that we won't be clamping it and possibly damaging the wires, the conductors inside. Now I'm gonna feed these wires up from the bottom to the top through that drain hole I showed you in a previous shot. Make sure I got the routing just the way I like it. Take out the slack and let me prep my screw here with my thread locking agent. I'm using medium here, removable. Just like to make sure that I get enough on there so that it's caked really good and vibrations won't remove this screw out of the bike. This fastener will require a 4mm Allen. Like I mentioned before, a single pinned connection with this screw creates sort of a vertical hinge effect. So what we'll need to do is make sure that we hold the base from rotating and then tighten down on this screw. If you're a torque wrench kind of guy, 8.8 foot-pounds is what we're going for here. And now, I'm just gonna check that I have enough slack here. And in fact, I do. This is all looking good. At this point, it's very difficult to adjust the length of this wire here. It is possible, but it is difficult. You have to push and pull from both sides. We can refine that a little bit later. Like I mentioned earlier when I was pre-configuring this, I like to tighten up these connections on the bike and then finally these connections with the license plate in place. So let's do that now. 3mm Allen, 8mm open end or box. This doesn't afford too much side-to-side mobility, but does a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that it's centered before I go ahead and tighten it down. Now, put my license plate in place. Get it fastened down. All right, that's looking good. Now, let's grab a 4mm Allen, unlock our hinge point. Once again, glance to make sure we have enough slack on the wire to adjust. I know some guys like to have this license plate angle kind of up high like this. This is possible. This is also possible. Now, think about the suspension travel here. Probably don't want it to be pointing towards the tire. This bike has a very long suspension travel. You may hit it, bend your license plate. You don't want that. So It's basically within that range. It will be to your liking. I like this angle here. So now I'm just going to lock these guys down, make sure that they're tight enough and that license plate doesn't droop down from vibration. All right, and now I'm going to take up a little bit of that slack in the wire, get it a little bit tighter against the base, and that looks good. And now it's just a reverse order of disassembly unless you have a license plate light to connect. I'll show you that step next. Up here, I'll make sure that my routing is up to my liking. I do like to run the wire to the center first, and then under this frame component. All right, now I'll grab the actual connector for our license plate light, and we'll talk about a couple options here. Obviously, this is an actual connector housing. Our universal license plate light comes with these terminations, and we do provide these nice little posi tap connectors. This is how I like to make the connections. Very easy. It's also removable, and once removed, it is replaceable very easily. And also, when you remove it, it's easy to snake back through and remove physically off the bike should you ever need to. If we would terminate this setup in the same connector as this, then we wouldn't be able to pass it through the little orifice there, and we would have a bigger challenge. So now on this end, we are presented with the option to possibly cut off this connector and then connect this terminating wire into here to plug in. I typically don't like to do that. I just take away some of this housing here, this shielding, and tap in just below. So that's what I'm going to show. Let's make sure that we have some wires exposed. And now we have a green and a black wire. Typically on Hondas, the green is the ground. If you check against your signal connections, the green is in fact the ground on this bike. So we'll have to connect the black to the green here and the red to the black. A little counterintuitive, but no big deal. We will remove the larger end off our connector. There's a slot going through it, and we will place that slot around the wire. And now we will screw the rest of this connector body onto this thread here. There's a little piercing element that will pierce the insulation of that wire and make the connection for us. Our license plate light is a very low current application, so it doesn't require a very big conductor at the connection. I'll repeat that on the other wire. I will just stagger my connector a little bit so that I don't have space issues here. If we put them right next to each other, we will bulk this connection up and it'll just be a pain in the butt to contain later. Now you have to make sure that you turn this top portion into the cap until you smush the insulation, making sure that that connection is actually made. Let's grab the end of the wire here and remove the smaller cap from the opposite end of the connector. And the non-threaded end will go over our wire. Just need to make sure that you have enough protruding, a tiny little bit showing out of the rim here. That looks to be good. I'm going to screw this in now. Again, black to green, and then red to black. Make sure that is nice and tight. Give it a tiny little tug. Make sure that it won't disconnect itself in operation. Same deal for the other connector. If for some reason there's not enough protruding through here and the connector's not grabbing it, once you screw it down, you'll need to strip away a little bit more of that insulation to make sure that you get enough grip on there. All right, I'm gonna give it a test so that I don't put everything together without function. In fact, I do have function, so we are clear to neaten this up, get the wiring all bundled up. Our license plate light does come bundled with the wires bundled up and a little twisty tie on them. So whether you're using a zip tie or that twisty tie, you can actually rebundle these wires and make them into a nice neat little bunch. And that will be easier to shove into the insulating boot here. Slide this boot back up over all these connections. Typically the taillight connector sits in there as well, but on our setup here we've already installed a brake light modulator, so that's why you see this plug out of there. All right, this looks pretty good here. I'm gonna make sure that my tail fits over all this stuff without any interference. We shouldn't have an issue. We'll first get these little peg features into their windows and then make sure that these tabs fit under the black plastic and over the frame. Okay, that's looking good. I'm gonna press in the side fairings into their locked location. All right, this is looking good. Let's get the seat in place. The seat does have this geometry. The seat does have this little catch geometry here that goes onto this protrusion. Also, we have these hooks here that need to engage. All this stuff has to engage simultaneously for proper locking, so let's make sure we are careful about that. Now at the aft end here, to make sure that the tabs protruding from the back of your seat fit underneath the red plastic here. All right, now that that's all done, let's start getting these fasteners back in. Like I mentioned early on, the silver color washers go in the front location. Now when we get these in, they do have shoulders protruding towards inboard. I want to make sure that we get those concentric with this component and the seat. Otherwise we'll be clamping some pieces against the frame instead of keeping them pinned. I like to do all this by hand first and then tighten it all down with tools. All right, that's pretty much it. As you can tell, I was using only very simple tools and the whole installation took me no time at all. If you like what you see here, check out tstindustries.com. We have these kits ready for you, ready to be packaged up and sent out to your garage where you can use this video to be successful in making this assembly. All right, ride safe, you guys. If you like what you have just watched, give us a subscribe, hit the notification button, drop me a comment. I'd like to hear from you. All right. Ride safe. Later.